This is a presentation of Chippewa Valley Community Television.
We're here on Water Street with a couple of friendly pedestrians. This is Kate Hale Wilson and Sue Sukting, and I just thought we'd try to get their reaction to the sculpture tour. What do you guys think?
I have loved it ever since we started doing it. I love the chance to see lots of different sculptures and talk about it with friends and sort of say which ones we'd like to have in our backyard if that were possible. And right now I've got my eye on that eagle down there because I think it would look awesome on the UW-Eau Claire campus.
How about you, Sue?
I just like the idea that you can just randomly walk down the street and run into a piece of art. It's just a cool thing you can do without walking into a building. You know, it's just right there in front of you, and walk around it, and you can, some of them you can sit on and you can just enjoy it. You know, it's just part of your life on the street. So
Yeah, it really enhances life here in Eau Claire, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
yes, definitely. I appreciate it very much.
We want them to do more, don't we?
I do. I like it when we end up actually buying some of them, or places do. Like, I love it that the library, the public library, has that great one from a previous tour of the girl inside the circle reading. You know, it's just, it really enhances the city. It's part of the positive direction I feel like we're moving in.
Yeah. You got a favorite, Sue?
Not off the top of my head.
There's so many.
Yes, there are so many. So I guess, yeah, I like them all.
Sue Larson is the board president of the sculpture tour and a major organizer. There's a lot of questions that people have about the sculpture tour. How did we, I mean, it's a great thing. Everybody says it's great. How did we get this idea to get it here? And, you know, I know it's a long process, but I imagine where did it come from?
Well, definitely Sherry Moore, who is an Eau Claire community member, was very, very much at the foundation of how the sculpture tour came to Eau Claire. She moved here from Sioux Falls, and Sioux Falls has a very well-developed sculpture tour that they started in 2003. And so she had the idea, she watched in Sioux Falls how it was such a great economic-based sculpture tour that would be outside, that it would be in front of locally owned businesses and promote education, promote economic development, and promote the arts, along with helping, you know, the sculptors show their work. I mean, there's many cases where these sculptures are the first sculptures that people have had an opportunity to visit and see if they aren't people that maybe have thought to go to the museum or travel to larger cities to see sculpture. It was such an opportunity to bring nationally acclaimed and internationally acclaimed artists to our community. So Sherry truly was the person. I was working with her on the project. She told me about it, and just have been on roller skates ever since.
I am here at the Senior Center There was a presentation here on the sculpture tour, and Gary Schuster was part of the panel talking about how happy ECRAC is to be part of the sculpture tour. And that's a new arrangement this year, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Actually, it was just this August that the Eau Claire Regional Arts Council partnered with the sculpture tour to provide administrative support.
And why'd you make that decision? I mean, it might be obvious to a lot of people, but why don't you tell us?
I think that the decision was actually made by the Sculpture Tour Board of Directors. There's Board of Directors are volunteers, and a lot of times volunteers have other responsibilities that take them away, and they've done a great job for 3 years of organizing the sculpture tour and doing the day-to-day labor, but it's taken some of them away from their other jobs or from their enjoyments of retirement. So it became to a point where if the sculpture tour wanted to expand, they needed to bring someone in to help with those day-to-day administrative responsibilities, making the phone calls, organizing receptions, planning, and so forth. They'll still be involved in sculpture selection, they'll still be involved in the jurying of sculptures, they'll still be involved in artist receptions and so forth, but we're going to do all the background work. So
which is substantial.
Yes, it is. And I think that's one thing that the Arts Council has gotten really good at doing, is being in the background and providing support for other arts constituents so that they can be on stage or that they can be out in the community promoting their artwork. So that's what we're going to continue to do.
Well, and you, the Eau Claire Regional Arts Council, ECRAC, have been very supportive of the sculpture tour for all 3 years anyway, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like all the other sponsors, we've provided support as well as some funding for them to continue on with the tour.
And it's a pretty darn cool thing for the area, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's really very visible, very interactive art. It's right up your alley.
Yeah, I think, it's one thing you can say about Eau Claire is the arts and culture are expanding yearly. I mean, every year there's something new that comes along. And when you have a project that's as publicly present as the sculpture tour is, it gains a lot of exposure, but it feeds that exposure back to other arts groups. So there's other arts groups that benefit overall from the sculpture tour being successful, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So really, each arts organization feeds off the other, because their success means success for somebody else. If we engage one person in sculpture, there's a good chance they'll come down to the Janet Carson Gallery to see paintings. If we do well at the gallery, they may check the sculpture out on their way. So it all kind of is back and forth. So that's another reason why it's important for the Arts Council to be involved in the tour, because we want to keep those links throughout the entire community.
Absolutely, and we love the sculpture tour, and we really appreciate ECRAC and what it does for the entire community, and how important arts are just for the community's mental health, let alone supporting the artist community within the community. And I don't know if there's any way to measure how the quality of living in Eau Claire has been benefited by the arts, but certainly we know that.
Well, I think absolutely. I mean, if we look just at little instances, so let's take, for example, Jam Software. Okay, here's a UW Eau Claire graduate who founded a company and kept it in Eau Claire. And so he kept it in Eau Claire because he saw things were happening. There was progression within the community, within culture and the arts and live-learn environments and so forth. So he kept it. So those types of things are really critical for a community to grow and expand and redevelop itself economically. There's one thing, Jim Clark, who was one of the founders of the Sculpture Tour in Sioux Falls, made a comment that one of his leading sponsors said to him, "We don't see the Sculpture Tour as an art event. We see it as economic development." And I think that's critical if we remember that all these arts events that we have, whether they're concerts or gallery shows or sculpture tours, these are economic development events that help grow the community. So I think that's really important.
And in this case, the dollar sign is not an ugly one. It's just another indication of health in the community. And it just shows how everything's connected. And art is so for sure not a superfluous entity in our community. So I really appreciate you talking to us.
Oh, it's great to talk to you. And I think, what I always tell people is stop talking about art, start talking about creativity. Because creativity surrounds everything you do. It shows up in the design of your toothbrush, your packaging. Everything you do in your life is somehow affected by creativity. So let's celebrate creativity in the arts in our community.
Exactly, creativity. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate ECRAC as well as your added involvement in the sculpture tour. I'm here with Etta Johnson and Judy Coopersmith, and they are on the sculpture tour, walking around, taking a look at all the beautiful sculptures here on Water Street. So, Etta, you were just telling me you're pretty happy with this.
I am very happy with it. It gives a whole different dimension to Water Street, I think. I had lots of kids growing up here, too, and the image that we had back then was, Saturday night on Water Street, and it was a big draw for the college kids. Now we're coming and we're seeing some art and beautiful sculptures, and it's, adults can come and feel like they're really enjoying something, and it's a beautiful day too, so combined with the beautiful weather and the sculptures, it's a fun place.
Yeah. For the whole citizens rather than just the college kids.
Yes, yeah.
And what are you thinking as you're looking at all this stuff?
I think it's nice that they moved it around. It was nice when it was downtown, but now they've got it downtown over at Phoenix Park and over here, so it gets everybody around the whole city.
Keeps us moving.
Keeps us moving, and you find things that you think, oh, I didn't know that was here, and there they are. So, yeah, it's a good idea. I'm glad it's successful.
Yeah.
And it's always fun to see what they're going to pick for the winner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thanks an awful lot for taking a moment out of your tour.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We've enjoyed it.
Have a good day.
I'm talking with Kara McConnell. She's the manager here of Estio here on Water Street, and we just want to talk. What do you think about the sculpture tour showing up on your doorstep?
I think it's wonderful. We appreciate having a little bit of culture and diversity here on the street, and they're really neat. They bring a lot of people down to look at the sculptures, and it's just nice to have a little bit of something different on the street.
Yeah, and having them change. I guess they change every year or so. You got a favorite?
I do have a favorite. My favorite is actually behind me. It's in front of Details Boutique, and it's a beautiful angel with a lot of different colored metals that was used to make it. It's really pretty.
Kind of fun coming to work, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's always fun down here, and I like the addition of the sculptures. It's nice.
We've gotten a chance to talk to Dan Messapust, who is one of the artists in the last couple of, in this year's and last year's Eau Claire Sculpture Tour. And you are standing in front of, looks like your sculpture graveyard. Yes, kind of part of your kit that you've been developed. But first, let's just talk about you. Your sculpture was of a horse that's on Barstow, I believe, and it's a gorgeous horse. How do you get involved in the sculpture tour? How do you, as an artist, from your end of it, how do you choose to want? Do you make the sculpture and then propose it, or do you propose a sculpture?
Actually, you make the sculpture and then propose it. So, like the first one I did was the otter, and it was actually still in clay, and I just had like styrofoam leaves and a couple little minnows So it was still in conceptual stages. So I took some photographs of it and wrote up a little statement about it and submitted it to Sculpture Tour, and the jury chose it. So then you have to go through the process of making the bronze and, of course, mounting it. So that was the first one. And then the second one was 2 years ago, was the giant frog, and that was a 2,500-pound cement frog for the kids. And they put that one in Owen Park. I was very happy about that.
Oh, come on. Some of us adults liked it too, you know.
Oh, sure. But I don't see too many adults crawling around on it.
At night when no one's looking.
Oh, there you go. So, and then this year's is called Gentle Strength, and that was a Friesian horse from Holland that I actually did for Legacy Friesians out in Oregon. And it was the marquee for a full-size one. It was just a wonderful, wonderful horse. He was actually, Jinska was his name, imported from Holland, and took over 67 measurements off him, spent about 3 months with him, and just a wonderful, wonderful horse. So now he's out in front of the livery. So
I understand Friesians are pretty smart, and I think Zorro's horse was supposed to be a Friesian, right?
Yes, and they were actually bred to carry knights. So they're very, very strong horse. And but yet he was so gentle. He got used to me, and when I'd show up to take measurements, I'd be making notes, and his big, huge head would just rest so gentle on my shoulder, and because he wanted to see what I was doing. And that's where I came up with the name of the sculpture, which is Gentle Strength. And one of the things I took liberty on is he's anatomically correct except for his eyes. The horse's eyes are, point kind of out to the side a little bit, and he didn't look gentle enough, so I took and I just moved his eyes in. So that's a little secret on the sculpture, so just to have him look a little bit more gentle. So,
well, it's a beautiful sculpture, and who knows what whether or not you'll win another award or someone will buy it. We have to wait and see. We're still in early October here, but I'm kind of curious. From what I understand, you're retired, and this is what you're doing in your retirement?
Yes, I work 6.5 days a week, and if I had to have a day off during work, I would sculpture. So I just keep sculpturing, and I just love it so much. And it's a lot less stress than the job I used to have, so I just love this. I've been doing it for 30 years, and for the last 3 years I've been doing it full-time.
So this is where you bloomed into retirement, huh? And you might be busier now than you were before, huh?
Oh, yes, but the happiest I've ever been in my life. I mean, it's just great. And I just love doing sculptures for the kids, and developing a little sculpture system that allows anybody to create a sculpture. The first one out of the box is going to be a horse, so how to sculpture a horse. So that's in development right now, and it's going to be on Kickstarter sometime in January. So, with the hopes that it might end up in some of the arts and crafts stores. So,
well, what's the motivation? Have you perceived that a lot of people feel that your kind of work is something they could never do, and yet they have talent, they have vision?
Yes, it's one of the things about making a realistic sculpture. Anything is a sculpture. You can just push some clay around, and if you like it, that's what makes it, neat for you. If you want to branch into more of a realistic kind of sculpture, well, then there's a lot of measurements and anatomy study and things like that. Well, what I did was I came up with an armature system that takes all the measurements out of the system. And it bends into the shape that the student wants. So if they want a rearing horse, it can bend into a rearing horse. And then I teach about each muscle going on individually, and you can kind of see that here, is that the students then put on the muscles. But they don't need to measure where that muscle goes, because if you push on the clay, you can still feel the bone. So now when I say attach the muscle from this point to this point, almost like sculpture by numbers, right? And then you show them what that muscle does. The neat thing about it too is I can bend the armatures, and I can show them, well, look what happened to that muscle right there. You know, it's like right here, you know. And this one's stretched, you know, so in one day, I can teach the basics of sculpture, and the first-time student goes home with something that actually looks like a horse. And one of the problems with clay is you get all your measurements made, and then you start working, and you end up with a horse that looks like this, you know. So this keeps everything straight, and they're training wheels. So yeah, once they get like a novice or an expert, this would get in their way, you know, because they already got that eye-hand coordination, you know. So this, they use the training wheels for as long as they want. They start lifting them off the ground a little more, and pretty soon they're off sculpturing.
So is this how you started back in the day?
No, mine was all done the hard way. So this is quite a lot easier. I have made a lot of crummy-looking sculptures to get to this point. So, and it eliminates having to throw away your first 50 sculptures.
Or maybe half of them.
That's right.
So you've been part of the sculpture tours here in Eau Claire. What's it feel like? You're an Eau Claire resident. It's got to give you quite a bit of pride.
Oh, it really does. 3 years ago when I came to Eau Claire, I was going to come to teach classes on sculpturing, and then I thought I'd get a few sculptures here and there. Well, Sculpture Tour picked me up, and then Mayo Clinic saw one of the sculptures. John Thorpe is their consultant, and put me into a pediatric ward 3 years ago. And I did, otter and 2 turtles, all in this pediatric ward, a frog and some fish and things like that. So they ordered quite a few the first year. Then this last year, I did a giant tree for them, where the kids can crawl inside the tree and play in another pediatric ward. And that was a really, really fun sculpture. It has a mom squirrel with 3 babies inside the tree that the kids can go, discover, and it's got a baby bear cub hanging on the outside. Then it's got a big tree wall that's 16 feet long, 8 foot high. So I've been really, really busy since I've gotten here because of Sculpture Tour. And I've got a little bit of a break now, so I'm now starting to concentrate 3 years later on these little classes in this system that I'm trying to develop so that anyone can sculpt.
Wow. So have you connected with other artists, and are they also finding that their work with the Sculpture Tour, for the Sculpture Tour, has given them more work, more inspiration?
Yes, I have not talked to a single artist that has anything negative to say about Sculpture Tour. It's all a positive. It's a really neat exposure, and you wouldn't even think that something like this would be in Eau Claire. Eau Claire is so lucky to have it. I mean, to be able to walk around and look at some of these artists, they're just high caliber. There's the Buddha, over on Water Street, just beautiful, and the Indians, and you better edit that. The American, the Native Americans. Yeah, so it's just excellent. So.
Well, and of course that indicates, just the caliber of expectations that we have around here. It's an investment by the community in your work, and also recognizing what art does for the whole person and the whole community.
Oh, yes, and plus also it shows the work ethic in Eau Claire, because the number of volunteers and the amount of work that they put in to bring this thing off. They'll take us to receptions, and the artists are like the rock stars at the receptions, but they really aren't. It's those people that are working like into the night to make all this happen. There's so many little details that you just wouldn't believe to get something like this off the ground.
Of course, I'm really glad that your art has been able to bloom because of exposure from the tour, and that you're a part of it. I'm real interested in your sculpture class personally. And I appreciate you talking to us.
Oh, well, great, yes. Anytime you want to come down to my studio, it's over on Western Avenue, and it's across the street from that Hope Gospel Building Center. So if I'm there, I'm happy to give tours, or anyone that's curious, just come on in.
Working on another cool big sculpture there?
Actually, yes. The sculpture I'm working on for Sculpture Tour next year is a giant dragonfly. So I'm going to do something really interesting with his eyeballs, because the dragonfly's head is mostly eyeball. So it's another fun thing for the kids. So
And some of the children know.
that's right.
I imagine you've got a lot of child in you.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever grow up.
Yay!
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.